Okay, Mr. Judgment.
Thank you, Dr. Conte. Thank you, everybody, for being here again this Sunday. Um, Dr. Conte, we're going to go ahead while hopefully Asan will join us. He asked us to bring the time forward to 1 o'clock, but he's still yet to be here. So we'll see how soon he joins us. But Dr. Conte, we have two issues we want to look at about the Gambia this weekend. One is the IEC nominations for the upcoming National Assembly elections in the Gambia. And the big event about that is the rejection of Momodu Sabali's application for UDP's candidacy in Busumbala. We will look at that and the issues that arise out of that rejection. And then we will look at the economy with regards to the finance minister's suggestion at his appearance at the National Assembly that the Gambia may actually go back to price control. This brought out a number of issues as well. Dr. Conte, we would all recall that the Gambia used to do what was called price control during the PPP days, early and mid PPP days. But PPP eventually got rid of price control because it did not work very well. So since then, never in Jammeh's time, never in Barrow's first time, but now that suggestion is coming up from nowhere but the finance ministry. So we will look at that as well and the reasons that prompted the call for price control in the Gambia. But first, Dr. Conte, we will go ahead and look at the IEC election, National Assembly election nominations that kicked off almost a week ago now. And a couple of days ago, Momodu Sabali, a man who self-declared himself as the commando, UDP commando, during the campaign time, went to the IEC office to tender his application for the Busumbala UDP candidacy, and his application abruptly, although I would say not surprisingly, was rejected. And then Sabali became very emotional immediately and actually went into an outburst, accusing the IEC of being used as a tool to deny his civil and political rights. And subsequently, his party, led by the party leader Dabo, called a press conference where they made a number of statements, which we would also scrutinize here. Basically rejecting the IEC's action against Momodu Sabali. And I understand the matter is going to go to court, but nonetheless, Sabali was told that he had 48 hours, basically 2 days, to appeal the decision of the IEC, which he did. And then today it is confirmed that the application for the appeal has been rejected as well. So it looks like we are pretty much getting to the end of the road for Sabali and the UDP as far as this matter is concerned. The matter may head to the courts, but in my opinion, in my humble opinion, the courts are not going to be able to do much about this. So a number of issues that came up, Dr. Conte. Sabali's rejection is not unexpected. Matter of fact, I think UDP should have been very proactive to avoid this, to press the courts to settle this matter before the nomination period, or even in a situation where the case is still pending in court, they could have come up with a different candidate, which they eventually may end up doing that, rather than allowing this situation to boil down to a confrontation between UDP and the paramilitary. Sabali's rejection is totally foreseeable because he was adversely mentioned in the Janek report, which was followed by the white paper. And the white paper alleged that Sabali committed a number of acts which amount to abuse of his office, fraud, and basically aiding abetting Jammeh to steal public funds, to misappropriate public funds. And the fact that this Sabali is adversely mentioned in a commission's report, like the Janet report, is sufficient according to the Constitution. As the quoted Section 90, subsection 1E, is sufficient to bar him from public office, running for public office, and holding public office. Dr. Conte, UDP is challenging this. My understanding is that, but I don't know if the party can really succeed in overturning this, because one is that the Sabali's case that is pending in court is not about the execution of the application, how President Barrow applies the Janet Commission, whether the Janet Commission is enforceable or not. It's not about that. The report is enforceable. The white paper is enforceable or not. It is not about that. It is about stay of execution. Sabali and his co-defendants applied to the High Court for the white paper report to be put on hold. And in a previous court ruling in Karafi, M.A. Karafi and the versus the Attorney General, the court has made it clear that the court cannot issue a stay of execution. But however, in Karafi, the court ruled that the commission's report itself is not sufficient to seize the assets, Jammeh and his associates' assets, and by the state. But it declined to execute issue a stay of execution. So, in my view, Sabali's case application for a stay of execution is going to be rejected as well. And Dr. Conte, Sabali also himself and also UDP claimed that they actually compared Sabali's case to that of Mamburanjai and Alaji Sise. Mamburanjai is the current finance minister, and Alaji Sise is the head of protocol, I understand, at the State House. These people were also, just like Sabali, adversely mentioned by the commission. But nonetheless, Barrow went ahead and appointed Mamburanjai as finance minister and continued to appoint Alaji Sise as the head of protocol, despite their mention in the white paper, just like Sabali. So, according to Sabali and UDP, This clearly indicates that Barrow is flouting the spirit of the Jana report. So they consider this to be kind of a selective application of the law. But in my view, again, I differ again um, from both Sabali and UDP's position on this. We have to separate IEC from the president. The IEC is an independent body, and Mamburanjai and Alaji Sise did not apply for elections, nominations. It is Sabali who applied for nomination. It is Sabali who approached IEC for endorsement to be able to run as a National Assembly member. Mamburanjai and Alaji Sise did not. So you cannot compare their cases as far as IEC's application is concerned. If they had applied to run for the same similar office and IEC allows them and denied Sabali, then that argument can hold. But as far as the situations are different, that argument cannot hold. Now, Barrow's appointment of Mamburanjai and Alaji Sise and the situation that Sabali is facing now are also different in the sense that Barrow is a president. He's not an official of the IEC. And the president has the power of the pardon. We all know that. Whether you are accused or charged with a crime or even convicted of a crime, the president has a prerogative. The president has the powers to basically pardon you from that situation. So even though the president did not publicly declare that he has pardoned these people, but his appointment of them in government basically serves a purpose similar to that. So I think I cannot say what he did is right. It may not be right. It may not be justice. It may not be fair to other accused persons in the Jana report. But clearly, the president has a power to appoint these people, and the courts do not have any power to rescind or nullify the president's appointment. So we have to make that very clear. Sabali's case, as unfortunate as it is quite different from Mamburanjai's case and Alaji Sise's case, at least in the eyes of the law, in my view. Another thing that also came up is that UDP argued that Sabali was not outright described in the Jana report that he has misappropriated funds or he has abused his office. But in my view, even though these exact words were not stated in association with Sabali, the report nonetheless accused him of using his office to help Jammeh misappropriate funds. And the report even went further to say that both Jammeh and Sabali are jointly and severally, jointly and individually, if I may state it like that. It's a legal term, that jointly and severally. But basically it just means they are together and also individually liable for the misappropriation of these funds. And the report said that these funds will be recovered from Jammeh's assets. And UDP and Sabali are both using this statement to indicate that that actually shows that Jammeh is the culprit, not Sabali. But no, this is not the case. I don't know how UDP is looking at the law, and I'm not a lawyer. UDP are full of very good qualified lawyers, but common sense tells me that that is not what the statement means. What it means is, in law, when they're recovering funds or when funds are involved, it is very typical that they go for the person with the deep pocket, the person with the money, with the assets to pay. So Jame clearly is the person with the deep pocket. Jame is the one who has assets, you know, that can pay for those funds. Probably not, most likely not Sabali. So that is why the law wants to go after Jame to recover these assets. That does not relieve Sabali of his liability. He's still liable and culpable and stands to be accused of the crimes that were committed by him and Jame together. But because Jame is the one money can be recovered from, he has plenty of assets in the country that can be impounded and sold to recover these monies. That is why the law went after Jame as the person with the deep pocket. So again, that argument that this illustrates that Sabali is uh, innocent or has not been um, guilty of misappropriation is not, in my view, does not stand at all. So that argument cannot really stand. And one other thing I also want to say, Dr. Conte, Dr. Jallo, is that it is very unfortunate to see UDP supporters skirmishing with the paramilitary in the streets of Serakunda, and especially around Davos' own home. Um, my suggestion would be that I think in difficult times like this, in volatile moments like this, where there is security crisis going on, I would rather see UDP supporters directed to the UDP bureau, their offices, and even in the streets than congregating at Davos house where his family resides. And, you know, it is just putting them in danger. The last time when you saw tear gases being fired at Davos house, the paramilitaries were running all the way into his compound. It's pretty scary and it is totally unnecessary. I think the party supporters should save this man. And, sometimes in crises like this, they should just stay away from his home. But I do understand, Dr. Conte, Dr. Jal. Gambian politics, partisan politics is very personalized. It is difficult to separate the party leader from the party. The party leader's home and personal properties, everything become part of the party machinery. So it is quite unfortunate, but that is the situation in the Gambia. Um, I don't know if you guys have followed these events pretty closely, but this is what I could make of what really happened. Dr. Conte, Dr. Jallo.
Yeah, Dr. Conte can go ahead. Dr. Conte, go ahead.
No, for me, was it not Usiano Dabo who recommended Mamburenja for the job?
I would think so. It happened since Davos time, yes.
And then how come he never spoke? Because Sabali
Right.
was the Sabali was not part of UDP then.
Right.
So for me, what I don't understand is selective justice. Because if Cisse and Mamburenja were adversely mentioned, even though the president has a prerogative to, based on the white paper,
Mhm.
and also the interior minister was he not implicated too? Am I not mistaken?
Right.
So this is not a matter of being a UDP supporter or being against UDP. Is an attack on one. It's an attack on all of us, whether we agree or disagree. I was very sad just for a young man just to be asking Minaketa for
Mhm.
the paramilitary to come and beat that young man. One of the paramilitary guys just came with his baton and hit the guy. Someone kicked him in the head.
Mhm.
Is this what we voted? Was this what we voted for against Jammeh? And for some of us who support the NPP, should we be quiet not to condemn the acts of the paramilitary and ask the Inspector General of Police to suspend these paramilitary officers until further notice? Should we not encourage the president to speak and condemn such brutality against our citizens? Are we in a banana republic where somebody can? Because I got with an NPP supporter who said, "Well, the UDP folks throw stones at them." I say, but if you arrest someone or you subdue someone, why do you have to beat them? Especially hitting someone with your shoes in the head. Now your man is MRI to see what is wrong. This may have a lasting effect on him. This is not the Gambia that all of us call for. And this is why sometimes they say what we diasporans, we support a political party and then we change our minds. Yes, we will change our minds if you try to mistreat our citizens, if we engage in corruption. So this is one area I just don't get it. And the president needs to come. Otherwise, he's going to lose people like me because I am not going to be a sheep to follow someone. I'm not going to do it. I don't support UDP, but I don't understand why Sabali was disqualified and how so urgent for them to make a ruling. When Mamburanjai was adversely mentioned, and Cisse also was adversely mentioned. So you pick and choose. This is a sad day for some of us. It's not that I regret supporting Barrow. It's just that the people around Barrow are making it very difficult for us to trust how he can govern because they are brutalizing our citizens. And this is totally uncalled for. That's all I can say.
Thank you, Dr. Conte. Thank you very much. Much appreciation on that. It is unfortunate, yes. Every time I see the paramilitary and civilians skirmishing in the streets, it is always very heartbreaking. I think we all need to do more to avoid that situation. Barrow needs to be more proactive to retreat from Jammeh era tactics that have been used to deal with the opposition. However, I also think that our political leaders should definitely do more to avoid situations like this. I think some of these things can just be challenged in court rather than, and press conferences are okay. It is good to come up with press conferences that clarify certain things, but we need to do more effort to keep our supporters from engaging in situations that will prompt confrontation with the paramilitary. I also want to briefly say before I go on to Dr. Jallo that in UDP's claims also, they claim that the Sabali's actions with regards to the allegations made by the Ghana report only amounted to a civil liability and indebtedness. That means he just owes money to the state. But he did not misappropriate any funds. And I think UDP made some very wild allegations here. Indebtedness. Seriously, this is not in any way an indebtedness. This is not kind of like a civil indebtedness. This is misappropriation of funds. It's not like he borrowed, he took a loan or something. No, it's not that. This is misappropriation of funds, perhaps even bordering on criminality. So we cannot window dress this and call it indebtedness. So I don't know. It doesn't tell well of his conduct in public office, and that is what the crux of the matter is. So, and this is why Sabalis will be very difficult for him to extricate himself from these allegations. Dr. Gallo.
Yeah, for me, thank you very much. It's a very critical situation that we find ourselves. I think I also condemn the police brutality that was meted on that individual, because if you have almost about 5 to 10 people surrounding an individual and that person has already succumbed himself, he was not armed, they could have just handled him peacefully and just take him to the police, and they can, do whatever the necessary action that they need to take against him. And I also condemn the UDP supporters also that were stoning the police, because that is also illegal. That was unacceptable. Even though if they were being provoked by the police, I think sometimes I think the police have acted outside the confines of the law, because even though if you have been assaulted by a civilian by stoning, they have they are trained to handle civilian when it comes to crowd and issues like that, when there is a revolt. And I think they could have used, some kind of better mitigating measures rather than using force. But what was shown or aired out on video that is making display on social media is really disheartening. It's unacceptable in this modern age and time. I know police brutality is everywhere. America is the worst part of it. It just reminds me of recent event that had happened in America, in Minnesota, in Wisconsin, and other places like Portland and others. Notwithstanding, and on the issue of UDP also, I will definitely agree with you, Keba, on the issue of Dabo not using his house as a measure or a kind of a human seal whereby he wants his supporters to be there. He's a political leader, and then he cannot also look at the sympathy of people, because he can only allow people to congregate at the party's headquarters and not his house, because he's exposing his family to danger, and that's not right. And sometimes when the police are there, they're also securing him. And in this volatile situation, he might think that the police are against him. How about if criminals also masquerade themselves within the UDP band or within the UDP folks, and then they resort to attacking his house, and they are criminals, and nobody knows where they are? Because you could have vested interests of politicians who could hire people, and the Gambia has been also exposed because we have criminals because of recent jailbreaks in Nigeria, Senegal, and other countries. They're all in the Gambia. And then, all of these people, they could be used and they could be hired by vested politicians. And they can attack him and they can put his life in danger. And then who is to be blamed? They would say now there is no security in the country. Sometimes I understand the situation is so volatile, but I think as of now, what we need is measured words, leadership to be displayed to the fullest extent. And sometimes we don't have to be apportioning blame to that extent, even though if if the police have they acted outside the confines of the law, there is a way of trying to look at things that we can address in the courts. And notwithstanding, there could be a proper panel whereby they can investigate of all of these right abuses, and then we can take necessary actions. And then if need be, sometimes I think our security reforms were not well anchored, and I think we were only theorizing the security, component, and we don't understand what security component or security reform, entails. And I think the Gambia have lost that battle. And then with the issue of Sabali, for me, there are almost about five angles that I can approach this. One, I think the IEC acted wrongly. Because why I say so, I'm not a legal expert, and I am not in agreement with UDP assertion of their version of what they have stated. Because I knew what Dabo has stated is really wrong. Because if you apply the moral equation of trying to deduce facts based on what we have in the 1997 constitution, Sabali could be disqualified. But did the IEC commissioner or the returning officer, did they utilize their role based on what was obtainable? Because I was of the view that Sabali applied for a state of execution in the High Court or the Supreme Court. So I don't know what was the outcome of that state of execution. And if you have a state of execution, that could qualify, that could tell you that as of now, they're not going to use this thing and allow the person onto a particular grace period. And I don't know what actually happened because I'm not privy to information. So
I
that's
can
what.
clarify that.
Yeah.
I can clarify that point briefly, if you don't mind. The
Okay. No
stay of
problem.
Sabali's application is still pending.
Oh, okay.
The courts have not decided on it.
Oh, okay. 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 Okay.
So,
Then, yeah.
but there is precedent. There is a previous case in M.A. Karafi versus the Attorney General. Karafi was also involved in Jammeh's associates.
Okay.
Also adversely mentioned by the Jammeh report, and I understand his assets were impounded, and he went to court. The courts have ruled in his favor as far as his assets are concerned, because the
Yes.
court said that the commission report itself is not enforceable without a declaration being
From
backed
the court.
by the
Court.
courts.
Exactly.
So he was able to get access to his assets, but his other application for stay of execution was denied.
Okay. Okay.
And the court categorically said that they cannot issue a stay of execution.
Okay. 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 Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's another case that went to the High Court, ruled by Mahoney, Basiru Mahoney. Similarly, he made a ruling similar to that ruling in Karafi, that the court does not have the power to prevent the executive from acting. I have not recently looked at that case, but there's another case that speaks to a similar conclusion.
Okay.
So as far as the matter is pending in the courts, Sabali cannot take cover under that application because it's
Okay.
not concluded.
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
that
Yeah.
is why I think, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much for that clarification because I didn't know I'm not privy to what was available as of now because I thought that application of court of execution he got something, so that was my agreement. But if that is the case, that means that he cannot take cover because he's not covered as of now, so
Right,
he can be
right,
automatically disqualified based on a government
right,
white paper. It's not all based on the government white paper, but because it was a set up commission of inquiry that
right,
investigated onto the corrupt practices of the former president. And then he was single-handedly, identified or adversely mentioned as people that aided and abetted Jammeh in
right,
defrauding the state or using the state resources for their personal, use. But
right,
notwithstanding, because I understand, even though if you look at the composition of the courts, so sometimes when they compose certain things and then when they come up, I think it's another debate, and I don't want to go in that far. But if there is a selective justice, but in government, there is always selective justice, whether we like it or not. There is nothing fair because sometimes we can question God. Because example now, what is that not selective justice when God created men and women? So why didn't He make one gender? So sometimes when we go to agreements like that, and they will say, "Mashallah, astaghfirullah," what is this guy talking about? But sometimes you can even look at the people. You see, you have two competent people. They have the same degree. They have the same experience. They have the same exposure. They have the same competence. They have the same skills. But one is far ahead of the other. So what is making that? So are you going to question God? Why he has given out this person to be better off than the other person? Or why does he make this person to be fair in complexion or this person to be darker? Then you start to question God, because if you want everything to be fair, equity and equality, so we said that God has to make everybody to be black and darker, because that was ancient creation, civilization. So what doesn't happen? Why does God create America? America is well off, is progressive, and Gambia is not progressive. Gambia is retrogressive. So are we going to question God and blame God for that? No. We blame ourselves. It's the system. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jallo. Very well said. Very provoking thoughts there. Very, very well stated. I just want to add a couple of things there, and that is the executive power. I strongly believe in executive power. But Dr. Jallo, Dr. Conte, I believe, if you look at the president's pardon power, it is very broad. The president has the power under the Constitution to pardon anybody who is accused, charged, or even convicted, and he can apply his prerogative of pardon at any stage of the legal process, even before the trial starts. Even after the trial ended, the person is in prison already. He can apply his power and freedom from that conviction. So it's a broad power, and it is legal. It is well established under the law. So if Barrow applies the white paper in the way he deemed it fit, and it looks unfair to somebody like Sabali, all he needs to do is go to the courts and make a case. You cannot make our country ungovernable out of your grievances.
Absolutely.
There's an avenue for you to pursue and seek redress from the courts.
Yep.
Not to become emotional and take the law into your own hands. Barrow may not be fair. He may have his own sympathies for certain people. But that's up to him. Even if you look at the pardon power, the president can go to prison and excuse certain people and leave others there who committed similar crimes to these people he just pardoned. But we don't question that because he has the prerogative. He decides who to pardon and who not to pardon. And those are well established in legal theory and
Absolutely.
practice. So this case is very similar to me like that. So all you can do is to go to the courts and lay out your grievances and ask the courts to review the case. And hopefully the courts can help you, but you can't make our country ungovernable because of your individual grievances.
Absolutely.
That much I wanted to say, and I think one more thing I want to say before I go back to Dr. Conte. Sabali, this matter should have been pursued before this day. I think UDP should have been very proactive in trying to seek clarification about this matter, before this day arrives. Sabali, what he did is very serious, and there's no way Gambians should condone it because, this is the kind of thing we need to fight in our country where, people in public office can just act in this way simply because the president asked them to do it. They should be able to have a backbone and say, no, this is not right. I cannot do this against my own country. And for UDP to call that a civil indebtedness, that is outrageous. It's not.
Yeah.
And the reason why the law is going after Jame, because Jame is the person who has the money to pay for this. Sabali may not have any, probably don't have any money. He may have, but, as far as assets are concerned, he doesn't have sufficient assets to recover from him. So the law goes after the person with the deep pocket. Sabali is liable, just like the report said, both individually and jointly with Jame, jointly and severally. And his liability, in a way, can also be considered a vicarious liability, where his liability can be imparted to Jame, who is his boss and who has the money to pay. So, I know UDP are full of lawyers, they're very good lawyers and stuff, but the arguments they made, really don't fly.
Doesn't fly. It doesn't fly. And can I even interject
Yeah.
quickly, just a second? Because
Yeah.
I think also, notwithstanding, because what you have raised a very critical issue here. Well, because if they want to hand over everything and shift everything on Jame, so then what was the essence of having a commission of inquiry? Was Jame the only person running the Gambia?
There you go.
You
Exactly.
know, because this is where double standard is, because you want the law to apply, and then to apply for individual and not to be to be externalized. So why do you internalize because you have a grievance against an individual? Because it seems like UDP, all their agenda is on Jame, and Jame was not the only person, because all of these people,
and if you look at,
they make money out from Jame because they utilize Jame. Why would you say that Jame is the one going to pay it? No, he's not going to pay it, because all of these people that have benefited from Jame, whether we like it or not, directly or indirectly, because they were there, as you stated right, consent should have dictated them. But they came to the commission of inquiry, they came to the what do I call the TRRC, and they were telling no at that time. My family, I was very much concerned about my family because if I say so, I would have died. My family would have died. So what
Right.
even made them at the first instant to even take responsibility?
Right.
So you don't
And
blame people. You don't blame Jame. You blame those people who work under Jame. They were not under duress. They did it deliberately because they wanted to
right.
play the game.
Right. And the same can be said about the junglers. They could make the same argument that UDP is making, to
Yeah.
excuse Sabali's actions.
Huh?
They were called by Jame to do this, and they were in no different position than Sabali. They had to do what they were asked to do, but the law recognized that when you know that what you are being asked to do is illegal, you have the right to say, I cannot do this.
Absolutely.
But they did not. Sabali, just as the junglers, just played the game.
Yeah.
And today you cannot say that they did not commit anything because it's all instruction from Jammeh. No. Dr. Conte.
Well, for me, I even asked Sabali, how much money did he steal? He never answered me.
He would not.
But Sabali was not the only one who stole.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Right.
Numbering guy, all the rest of them did. This is selective justice. Again, by denying Sabali his rights, they have denied all of us our rights. By kicking that young man in the head, they have shown us that the Jammeh style paramilitary tactics still goes on in the Gambia, and that's very sad.
Right.
Today is not a matter of condemning UDP, and if they are they claim to be the largest political party, I think they also have a right, a fiduciary responsibility to citizens of the Gambia to have peaceful demonstration, not destroying anything, because we cannot take this. This is how Jammeh stayed in power, and the president is so secluded that probably he didn't even know that this thing happened. So we just going back to Jammeh era, police brutality and retaliation. If you support a political party but you disagree with some of the policies, they brand you as against the president's agenda. No, this is not what I supported, and I will be damned just because I don't support UDP. That I should rejoice of what happened to Sabali and the young man who was kicked in the head. Then I'm not a true Gambian.
Absolutely.
For me, they can take their job and take it somewhere else. But I will not sit here and allow anyone to brutalize a Gambian, deny a Gambian the right to participate in political democracy, Sabali, while other people who were part of Jammeh's regime, who stole, enriched themselves, are still with the chief of protocol, Mamburanjai. You name it. No, UDP owes us responsibility to come out and demonstrate. If I have to break away from NPP, so be it. But I will not sit here and allow a Gambian to be denied their rights and rejoice over the beating of a Gambian. No, I cannot do that.
Thank you, Dr. Conte. Thank you very much. I think actually UDP are coming out on Tuesday to protest. I understand Ibrahim Adiba of UDP has applied for a permit to protest on this Tuesday. Um, I doubt the permit will be extended to them, but my understanding is that they have made an application to
Uh,
come out on Tuesday.
but what's the rationale for a protest? I don't see
Um,
that
I,
there is any rationality, because the issue is, if they want to seek redress in the courts, it will be best for them to
mhm,
use the courts and not to use a protest. Because as of now,
right,
we are in a very volatile situation, and we don't want to use politics to divide us. Because if they go
right,
for a protest, you cannot control who's going to be in those crowds, and those
right,
peaceful protests could result to a violent. And then they will also
right,
start coming and say the police brutality, because some of these people, you look at the unemployment rate now, people will use those opportunities, and they can, it can result to something else, and the country will suffer.
right,
So,
right.
we don't want that. As of now, it's not the time for protest. If they have anything concerning, they can use the courts and they can seek for redress. The courts are there.
Right. And I think in my humble opinion, I think the permit is going to be denied. They're going to be denied the permit to protest, and they may still go ahead and do it, and they're going to have a clash with the paramilitary again. And this time could be very brutal. The paramilitary could be very high-handed. And I'm saying this because during the couple of days ago, the protest, the skirmishes with the paramilitary with the UDP, there are statements, um, in conflict theory, what they call conflict metaphors. There are there are words that are used in conflict that kind of defines, that tells you the kind of uh, the extent of the severity of the conflict, how the parties in the conflict see and interpret the actions of each other. So in that skirmishes, I could hear some paramilitaries while they are striking UDP supporters that you people don't want peace. Ultimately of Cairo and Bangkok. You guys don't want peace in this country, and that is what basically the security forces, by and large, see UDP people, especially during strikes and protests and demonstrations. And you can hear on the UDP side the kind of words they're telling the paramilitary and the kind of insult they are hurling at President Barrow himself. You know what I mean. Others were insulting his mother outright. All kind of insults. So you can see the extent of the metaphors, used in this conflict between UDP and the paramilitary. There is a lot of animosity, and because of that, I have a feeling that if Ibrahim Adiba went ahead and come out on Tuesday, especially when a permit is denied, I am afraid it might turn bloody. I would definitely like to see him cancel the protest if they are denied the permit. They can still pursue this case in the courts. It's a simple case, and they can find a candidate that can be equally successful as Sabali,
Mr.
in
Jada,
Busumbala. But
Mr.
yeah,
Mr. Mr. Jada,
yes,
the Usman Songo incident in Senegal. You
right,
see, if we go by this loyally advice,
right,
they will keep on brutalizing us. UDP
right,
had been doing the same thing and Gambia State for 22 years. No, I tend to believe that this will take to the streets.
Mm.
that's
We
true.
have to suffer somehow. This is not right. The courts are corrupt.
Absolutely,
They will tell them what to do and they will render. This is not the Gambia we really want to have. If Senegalese can do it, how come we Gambians cannot do it? So we're gonna go to court and waste our time while a Gambian was hit in the head, while a Gambian was denied the right to run for election. But people like Mambur and Jai can be ministers. Then Alaji Sise can still be protocol officer or chief of protocol. So this is selective justice? No, I tend to disagree on this one.
Yeah, for me, I will disagree with Dr. Conte, because I don't think protest is the solution. Because the issue is, who are those who are going to protest? It's not going to be the sons and daughters of Hussein Dabo. It's not going to be the sons and daughters of President Adam Barrow, Mamburinjai, Sabali's brothers and nephew and niece. No, these are ordinary Gambians, people that come from different backgrounds, and these are disadvantaged families. And then, there is a public order law, And even though if we know that the public order law is outdated, is something that is unconstitutional, we have a country, and when we have a country, when we are building a country, we build a country based on law and not on men. And now, protest is not the solution. Even if Senegal have done it, Senegal and the Gambia, they're different. Because even though we are just next door neighbor, doesn't mean that Senegal has done it, but what resulted to Senegal? There were numbers of almost 14 deaths. Are we going to sacrifice an individual life? Life is so precious at this material time. We are as of now we are seeing the outcome of the Russia invasion in Ukraine. We have seen the deadly outbreak of COVID-19 and the emergence of the new variants. So where are we headed? As a Gambia, a country that depends on handouts. And then if you go for a protest and then it resulted to violence, and then it resulted to loss of life, it resulted to public property destruction, and even private property that have been destroyed and looted. So who's going to fall the victim? Each and every one of us. The country is going into shambles. The country is suffering. So I think the issue is, as genuine governments, we are not supposed to encourage protest. I think let them just resolve the courts and then make it assassin like the courts are corrupt. To me, I don't think the courts are corrupt, because that's very serious. Because who are the lawyers and who are the judges? These judges were recommended by the Judicial Service Commission, and that was the time that even the UDP government was in place. These people, they influence, and now if they feel like the judiciary is corrupt, but they were able to win a lot of cases. The case of Yakuma Jaite, was that not the independence of the judiciary? That was a full demonstration of the independence of the judiciary. So I have a full faith and trust in our judiciary. And I think the best option as Gambians, as Gambia, because we need to understand the democratization of civility. And then in understanding what we need to do, and a country that is going through difficult process and through difficult situations, especially transitioning from post-dictatorship to democracy, is difficult. And I think we can buy time still now, because the issue is we need orientation. And orientation for people to understand civic education. Civic education to understand their obligations, their duties as citizens. There are ways of settling certain things. You have UDP. They were having almost about 36 members of National Assembly. What they were doing in the National Assembly? They have wasted almost about 5 years. They're only able to achieve only 12 items. They're telling me of 2.5 items that we are achieved every year. What they were doing? They were receiving salaries and traveling, attending other APCA, conferences and, other aid within the sub-region. No. The issue is you don't have to, who is to be blamed? We have a problem, man, in that country. And then the only issue we can solve the issue is to base it on ideas and see how best we can tackle. We have a problem. And let us acknowledge that we have a problem. But how do we address this problem? Because Gambia is only one Gambia. It's only one Gambia. And we are all family members. And I don't want innocent, average individual, poor people becoming victims. And these people, politicians sitting in their homes, enjoying their chura, gete and bahal, and always are going to jail. No. To me, I discourage every Gambians not to protest unless and until if the sons and daughters of Utejo Dabo, the nieces and nephews of Sabali, and then the sons and daughters of Barrow and other people to go out and protest first. Let them be on the forefront and let us see what they're gonna do. They cannot sit in their homes and tell us to go and protest. No. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you, Dr. Jallo. Thank you very much. To be very clear, protests, civil disobedience are protected rights. So UDP has a right to protest. However, we have a Public Order Act in the country, and the police have quite a leeway to decide to choose whether they want to issue or deny a permit. I think UDP should be fairly treated and issue the permit if the police are pretty convinced that a peaceful protest can be conducted. However, I understand in situations where the police doubt that a peaceful protest can be conducted, they may deny a permit. And this is where I get worried. When a permit is denied and Ibrahim Adiba and his people went out and protested, it is quite likely that he may turn violent. Based on what I saw 2 days ago, throwing stones and tear gases and all that stuff, and I get worried about the consequences of that. I hope they can resolve this amicably. Dr. Conte, last word if you have one, and then I will move on to the next one.
I believe they're not going for a protest. They are just threatening people. They're not going for a
They're
protest.
threatening. I hope it is. I hope it is just that. But thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, guys. We always disagree here to agree. So we're gonna go on to the economy. Dr. Conte, Dr. Jallo, our finance minister Mabranjai recently, in his appearance to at the National Assembly, um, almost threatened that the Gambia uh, will return to price control, and this is prompted um, by the unmanageable inflation in the country, price inflation, to be precise. Price of commodities are skyrocketing uncontrollably for some time now. And Mamburanjai highlighted some of the steps that the government took to contain this situation, but nothing seemed to be working. Uh, there have been incentives thrown at business people, importers, and stuff uh, uh, in an attempt to control skyrocketing prices. So far, nothing seems to be working. Prices continue to skyrocket, and the minister is pretty frustrated. Um, in a previous appearance at the National Assembly, he seemed to have blamed the Trade Ministry for the situation, and I was concerned about that too. That we were pointing fingers at each other. But recently, he talked about price control. And I think that might be very ill advised. I think the Gambia should not try to return to price control of the PPP era. PPP used to have a price control system in their early days, but sometime later on, in their middle and last part of their rule, they abolished that. The prices were left to the market forces rather than state controlled pricing system. So when the government tries to control prices in a way that the minister was suggesting, I think basically what it is going to do is that it's probably going to worsen the situation because basically there is going to be hoarding. Uh, there's going to be a problem on the supply side, and there will be a lot of excess demand. And this may actually push a lot of people into the black market. We may end up having long lines where prices are adequate, where there are commodities that people can buy. But in the end,
So,
there's going to be a big shortage of supply, and the excess demand will drive um, suppliers into the black market, and this will be uh, pretty much very negative on our economy, I think. Um, so I don't think it's a good idea to revert to price control. Um, it is just going to create shortages in the country, pretty much in everything. And if you look at most of these basic commodities in the Gambia, they are staples. There's no, consumers really have no choice. No matter what the price is, they're going to have to find a way to buy these things. The elasticity, the price elasticity of these things is very, very inelastic. Um, no matter what price you ask, consumers will have to find a way because they can't do without these products at all. So we have to be pretty conscious of that. Um, and another thing that the government and the ministry needs to be aware, they probably know this already, that the tools actually to contain the is probably outside the Gambia. I don't think Gambia has the effective tools to deal with this inflation going on in the country because it doesn't really have to do with uh, importers. It has to do with global systems as well. There is an energy crisis around the world right now, and the energy prices are skyrocketing, and this affects pretty much all the all kind of commodities that people utilize. So the sources of the inflation certainly are within the country too, but a large part of it also is outside the control of Gambian economy. So we have to be very um, aware. We have to be very much aware of these forces that are impressing on our economy, rather than trying to take a drastic measure like price control. Dr. Jallo, Dr. Conte.
Dr. Conte, you want to go ahead?
You go first.
Yeah, thank you very much for bringing the issue of what the minister has stated. I think that's a no-brainer from an economic vintage point, because we need to understand that one common perception of a problem with non-regulated market is that the equilibrium price is unfair. But there is the need for the government to intervene when prices continue to rise and to address the exogenous factors. Because what you have stated on what the issue of inflation, these are exogenous factors that we cannot even control. But the issue is the government can also make an adjustment when it comes to its macroeconomic fundamentals. When you do it right, because you look at your fiscal policies, you also look at your monetary policies. So in your fiscal policy, your fiscal policy has to do with what we call the tax regime. So the tax regime, the government have done so much, incentives, but were the incentives so enough? Because there could have been a moratorium on certain taxes on basic commodities, because some of these commodities that comes into the Gambia that are imported, they are zero rated, or reduction in tax rate to make the purchases of food affordable for the average consumers. But notwithstanding, the issue is because you also need to understand that the Gambia trade in a dollarized item, and then it's a global market whereby dollar is the unit of is currency of conversion. And then if you look at the Gambia, the dollar now is $50 to a dollar. And if your country's currency is down, it impacts negatively because you have to buy foreign currency so that you'll be able to import, and that will trickle down on your price. And then you also we need to understand that the global outbreak of COVID-19 has impacted negatively economics. Especially, it has led to a supply shock on the supply chain, and which also trickled down or impacted negatively because suppliers were unwilling to provide because they were added extra services or extra fees, which other people that were buying were also unwilling to pay. And if they're willing to pay that price, that means they will also add that as a markup price to the kind of a product or service they are to offer. And notwithstanding, we need to understand that price control to me is a no-brainer, because we need to understand there are two extremes of price control. One has to deal with the price ceiling when the government mandates or dictate a maximum price for good. And the second issue has to deal with what we call the pricing floor. That is when the government sets a minimum price below which no price can fall. But we need to understand, in an extreme demand environment, there is an inverse relationship between the supply and prices of goods and services. And similarly, when demand exceeds supply, prices are likely to arise as a consequence of the domino effects of events like the Russia invasion and the COVID-19 outbreak, causing a deadening supply shocks resulting to high inflation. For now, you look at even the gas supply in Russia, and now even in America, you are in America, Dr. Conte is in America. We have also looked at the soaring price of gas, whereby it is indicated that in the next 3 months it's going to be $4 for a gallon of gas. So it used to be almost about $2.80 and $3 and $3.25, but it's going to rise in the next 2-3 months to $4. Because you look at a barrel, you look at a barrel of gas or fuel, it is now almost about $1, $110 to $120. That's an increase because of the recent event that has happened. But notwithstanding, we need to understand from that perspective, from that economic perspective, that price control are not likely to cause they are likely to cause the underground economy. For instance, when you have price control, it's a very bad mechanism. I don't know what came to the mind of the minister to think about the Gambia resulting to price control, but it's a no-brainer. Because, for instance, if it's going to be another problem of price control is that it will cost to hoarding. It will cost to hoarding to an extent whereby there would also be what we call market speculators. It will lead to an extreme speculation. And then it will also lead to gouging, whereby people will increase prices because the demand exceeds the supply. And then when people demand, prices will rise. And then when prices rise, people will also not be in a particular position to buy. And then it will also tempt people will also be tempted to buy at a low price and sell on the black market at a higher price to those who cannot keep. For instance, price control doesn't even address the root cause of inflation. For example, if inflation is caused by excess demand, then that demand will still exist, but the price control will make goods more attractive, more attractive. And the other issue has to do with lack of incentives. When you lowering price limits can also reduce incentive for farms to increase supply, because government cannot even also go into that area whereby they want to dictate prices. And then if they dictate prices and lowering prices, that would also reduce the incentive for farms to produce or increase supply. And the Gambia, looking at the Gambia, it's not it's a market-based economy, but it's not an industry-driven. So where are we headed? Where are we headed to? We are going to a cold winter when we are even in summer. Do we want to live in that kind of a situation? No. I think the price control is a no-brainer. The issue now for the Minister of Finance, I have good hopes and I have high hopes that they have people who are competent and they understand how the economy can run. But sometimes when you have some forces like certain things, a lot of things could happen. But I think we can sit together and try to, devise some economic policy mechanisms that could help the Gambia. And there are things that we can tackle because some of these are exogenous factors that we cannot, but at least we can mitigate. We can have some mitigating strategy. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Jallo. Very well said. Yes. Actually, yes. Very, very true. Um, I remember during PPP's time when there was this shortages of basic commodities. The question of enforceability becomes also apparent. How the government is going to enforce these price ceilings. Um, During Jawara's days, when there were massive shortage of commodities in the mid 80s, um, what happened was that there were a lot of speculators, like you rightly said. I remember there were people that were going around, fraudulently telling people, collecting money from people with the promise that they have a large consignment of commodities arriving in the country and they need to pay in advance because lots of people are buying in advance. And they were collecting money from people with the hope of delivering these, and they were never, never able to deliver those goods to them. So it encouraged that kind of activity as well in the country, and largely because these commodities are the demand are inelastic. The quantity demanded are not very responsive to the price. No matter what price you charge, people are going to pay because they have no real alternatives to these products. So that comes to mind as well. As we deal with these issues, enforceability and all the unexpected consequences
Mhm.
that has to do with these price ceilings are going to come up as well. Dr. Conte.
Thank you very much, Mr. Jata and Dr. Jala. It's nice to hear from economists to talk about theories, and I just want to use the accounting application. And before also, I want to say that a former classmate of mine used to be a price control officer. So when he came to our village, I just went to just greet him. And what went around that I brought the guy to check on shopkeepers, you know. So uh,
Yeah.
I thought that was very fun. That was years ago. Now let's be realistic here because we are looking at price of a unit and whether you are producing it within whether it's domestic production or whether it is outside. So we accountants would like to know whether because Gambia imports more than it exports and we manufacture less. So what is going to be the final selling price of the product if the merchant wants to make a small little profit? So when I heard about this, I just was wondering what the heck is the minister talking about? Is he on his way out of the ministry? because I thought, in my view, I just want to show you all this. So let's give an example. If you are going to buy an item, oh no, hold on. Can you see it? I need to go back and make it smaller. Oh, just 1 second. Okay, so let's be realistic here. Whether we are producing outside or whether we have it domestically, if we have an item that we purchase at $1,000, we have to look at the shipping terms. Let's say that it's FOB destination shipping point,
Mm-hmm.
where you, the purchaser, is responsible for taking risk and also paying for the freight, which is inventoriable. It's going to increase the cost of the item. So let's say that we paid $100 for transportation cost, and for one reason we returned $200 worth of merchandise from the 1,000, and then we were given a discount of 2% to pay within 10-day period. That happens to be 18. So the net purchase of our item is $882. If we are importing this from outside, we have to pay tariff. And what is the rate of the tariff? I say, how about if it is $88? I just base it on 10%. So the cost of the purchase is $970. And we, as a seller, we want to try to make some profit. And we say that we're going to have 30% markup. So that would be $291. So the total will be $1,261. The government has a value added tax, and we have to quantify the value added tax at 15%, because that's the rate. We're talking about $189. The sales price for this item will be 1,450. Can Mambo and Guy tell me, by imposing or implementing price control, how much is the unit price for this? If we have to quantify the tariff, and we also have to quantify the value added tax, the merchant says, I am going to make 30% profit, and I'm going to sell this item at $1,450. Can Mambo Njai tell Gambians how much this price should be? On the other hand, let's say that we decided that, oh my God, we are not going to charge value added tax. So if you're going to have price control, get rid of the value added tax. Because value added tax, the cost is transferred to the consumer. This is okay. Have you been to the shop lately? 3 months ago, when you used to buy a pack of chicken, and how much it is now? No, go to the grocery store. You will be alarmed. Even tomatoes from
Yes,
Mexico,
good.
we import more than we export. I think this thing is suicidal. We need to promote agriculture. That should be the subject of discussion right now. Go to Walmart and look at one red pepper that they import from where? From Mexico or these Latin American countries. $1.49. Just one. Go to the shops in the Gambia, go around in the villages, Do you see anything? You see any productivity? So now the government wants to have price control. So is Mamburenja now anti-business establishment? Mamburenja wants to destroy our economic incentives. No, this is not a good idea. So you economists talked and you gave all these economic theories, and we accountants want to apply the theories that you've said. And in my view, if we are going to produce within Gambia on a $1,000 item, and even if we don't have to pay tariff, nobody is going to buy a product and at a cost and sell it at that cost. What's the point of you going into business? You're not even going to break even because you also have your fixed cost. This is why the president needs to overhaul. The trade ministry has nothing to do with what is going on. And we have been saying this over and over again. Senegalese are not better than us. During Sadauda's time, what happened? Senegalese used to come to Gambia, even to our hospitals. We are sitting down, Senegalese building what? Ports upon ports after upon ports. They have one now, they are building in Ziensor. What is wrong with us? Now they're talking about a dry port, but how can you take those items to Basse, knowing that every single day we have accidents in our country? We have a place where Bara, we also have Tanje or Gunjur, because the ships come through there before they get to Banjul. And no one is sitting down thinking that if a disaster happens, you cannot get in Banjul. You have only one way in by land, otherwise you go through the river. So we've been going through this over and over and over and over again, and we cannot go anywhere in our country. I engage a lot of Nigerians. They have this fun of calling us Little Gambia. I say, yeah, you may call me Little Gambia. Our total GDP, to me, in my view, is irrelevant when we compare our per capita. The Gambia is not behind a lot of countries. Even though we may be 11 out of, is it 15 countries in terms of GDP, but when you look at our deficit rate, we are not too bad. So Mambo Njai is trying to bring something that, in my view, is going to create economic uncertainties. And as a matter of fact, who wants to buy something that you're going to sell at a loss? What's the purpose of you going into business? No, they should come up with some. Get rid of the centralized services and the resources that you have there. Pump it into agriculture. We may struggle 1 year, but if we can concentrate on agriculture, because the appropriation for agriculture is less than $500 million, when the Ministry of Finance has over $1 million. When you have the Minister of Finance also responsible for what? For centralized services with a tune of $2.1 billion. When you have the Gambia Revenue Authority, they gave them the authority to what? To assess, collect, and record. And you go to the administrator, sorry, Mr. Jallo, you cannot even see any financial statements. They say we have collected 100% of what was asked of us. I said that's unrealistic in accounting. So you're saying that you don't even have any bad debt? So when I say, well, move the goalpost. If you say that you collected $15 to $17 billion in taxes, the government will say, now we want you to collect $23 billion. And here you have ministers coming into parliament after the passage of the 22 fiscal year budget asking for increase in salaries. Here you have the National Assembly approving a project, knowing that we don't have the resources, but we have to take a loan. And say, why are you going to approve this budget without parliament saying that we have to adjust the budget? If we have incremental budgeting, Gambian citizens need to know that. This is a nightmare, and I hope the president will change his cabinet and bring competent people. And for us in diaspora, they want our money. We contribute more than 27% to the GDP, but when we try to run for office, they say, no, you are a dual citizen. Oh, what a joke. Remember, I'm a St. Augustine's graduate. I will forever be a rebel. I can't close my kids. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
So,
you, thank you, Dr. Conte. Very well said. Yes, absolutely. Businesses thrives on profit. Without profit, businesses will not go. They will not do business. I think the Gambia should push for more competition in the private sector, in business, rather than price control. We have to push for more local production uh, to feed our people than depending entirely on imports. Um, Dr. Jallo, last word
yeah,
before
yeah.
we close.
I definitely Dr. Conte has raised very critical issue, and he was able to bring in some accounting perspective. I really appreciate it. And I believe, in the Gambian context, I think we have a problem because in management, there's what we call survival bias and then isolationist theory. And this is what is happening in the Gambia, in the Gambia context. Because you cannot have two ministries, two critical ministries, like the Ministry of Trade and Ministry of Finance, not sitting together on the same boardroom and trying to figure out issues. Because when it comes to trade, these are people that the Ministry of Trade has a responsibility, and then the Ministry of Finance also has a responsibility. But how do we come up and then try to match what we call a convergence of ideas and try to develop a policy an economic policy that helps the Gambia? But notwithstanding, I understand even when it comes to importation, there is zero rated or zero base, import tax that is charged on basic commodities. It's zero rated. But I don't think how does that trickle down for even for businesses to even add that as a markup or as an added price. And then Dr. Conte has also come up with the accounting term, especially because it's refreshing my mind and brought me back to what I learned over the years, like 4 years ago, like activity-based accounting. So, and then he also raised something like the markup price, which is very critical because, for instance, if you have certain things and then you have been taxed, and then at that given time that you import, and then a lot of things are added on that, and notwithstanding, but you also have to look at the transportation when even the goods are already in the Gambia. So the cost of transportation from Banjul to Basse also increases. It also will be added to the price. And then you also have to look at the rent that you pay. You also, if you have electricity, you have to pay. And then if you also have rates, you have to pay. And if you also have like employees, you have to pay. All of those things are added up and it will also add up into the price. The issue is, as I said earlier on, is the government that needs to come together and try to build up an economic blueprint. An economic blueprint whereby there is no isolationist policy, but it's a policy that is going to be a convergence of all the ministries. Because this thing you are talking about life, when it comes to basic commodities, these are foodstuff that people need, whether we like it or not, because we cannot go outside there and be waiting. Because that's why you see now families cannot even afford 3 meals a day because prices keeps inflating and then you cannot control them. Inflation, price control cannot even control inflation. And then, it can also be a disincentive and it can also lead to a shortage in supply of goods and services. And, it's a no-brainer. I don't know where the minister is coming from, but I think the Gambia, as of now, we need to keep talking and then how we can go and have legislation and policies, especially in the National Assembly. But our National Assembly, that's why we have a problem. Because our National Assembly, they're not doing anything that is expected of them. The issue is, I don't know, you listen to their debates. What policies are they coming up? If you go and bring, you lessen down or reduce the qualification and criteria of somebody vying in for the election of the elective office of a National Assembly, how do you expect that individual to come up and help? Because these are things that they can even encourage, they can engage these policy makers, policy analysts and stuff like that, so that we can come in and try to build up that kind of a blueprint for the Gambia. But as of now, what is the economic policy of the Gambia? We don't have. We only depend like hit and run. We cannot even establish like a student economics hit and run like the IMF will come. The IMF will come and recommend, and then you say no, we adjust. You cannot keep on adjusting. No, you don't adjust your sales like that. You don't have to like changing your goalposts every minute and every now and then. No, you need to have a policy that is designed and is well crafted, and that will tell you a direction. And then if whereby you are being faulted and you are faulted, you can see how best you can address those issues. And the Gambia, we don't lack that people. We don't lack people that have ideas. We don't have lack people that have the practical insight. Of course we have it. But the issue is those at the corridor of powers don't even want people who are intellectually driven, who even have the ideas so that they can help them. The issue is they can reach out to the diaspora. People have the knowledge bank and they can share it free of charge. But they don't want you to come to near to them. What is happening? Are we short of ideas? No, it's a problem. Thank you very much.
Let me tell you, PhD is called pull him
Thank you,
down.
Dr. Jallo.
Hey, excuse me, PhD is called pull him down or pull her down.
It's just sad.
Thank you, Dr. Jallo. Thank you, Dr. Conte, for the very good conversation today. Very much appreciated. Again, to our audience, this is it for today. You can reach us through Facebook or YouTube. Tell us what you think, and we very much appreciate it. Dr. Conte, Dr. Jallo, we'll meet again next Sunday. I hope you guys have the rest of your weekend very well.
You as well.
We'll see you again soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Take
you,
care.
Dr.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Have a good day.